OK, next up, we have a little bird that everybody loves and knows. It's not crypto Twitter. It's Lefteris from Rotki. And he's going to be telling us about building local open source software and why this is important.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming so early in the morning. So I'm going to be talking about open source local first apps. First of all, about who am I? I'm Lefteris. I've been in the field for quite some time, like since 2014 with the Ethereum Foundation, Solidity, then the DAO, and then later I worked on Rotki, which is kind of what I'm going to be presenting today. I will talk about what is open source, define the word a bit better, what is local first, which is something that I'm talking about all the time, and I will, well, many people have told me that they don't still get it, so I want to explain in more detail what it is. But what constitutes data ownership, what's the problem with most applications today that are closed source software as a service, a proposed solution, and then how Rotki implements this solution. So, open source, right? This is a word that many people use. It fills people full of hope, but it's a bit also overused. What does it mean? The biggest misconception is that visible code makes it something open source. So, as long as you can read the code, that is open source. That's purely false. So, open source is not just free, like open code, but it has to satisfy these 10 attributes, which are defined by the Open Source Initiative and the Free Software Foundation. It all boils down to being able to freely redistribute it, to be able to create derived works and keep the integrity of the author source code. You must not discriminate against anybody, so you can't say, I don't know, I don't like Greeks, so Greeks shouldn't use this software. No field should there should be no specific discrimination against a field, so you cannot say, it's a library, everybody can use it, but I hate crypto, so crypto people cannot use this library. Some stuff about the license, and then technology neutral, so you cannot have any restrictions. So all in all, it's about restrictions. So open source means freedom, which means that you cannot and should not have any restrictions in how the software should be used. Then, OK, what is software that just has the code open? This is generally called source available. Unfortunately, in our field, many projects have started doing this. The blue chip DeFi projects, the latest, the iterations. I think Uniswap v3 are the latest. Compound, the new one, are all some kind of business license that has a delayed open source clause. So that means after a particular amount of time, I think also governance can choose this, they can become fully open source. Then there is other projects like Redis has commons clause, and MongoDB has the SSPL, which is the closest thing to open source you can get, but it's not considered open source due to some restrictions. And there is, many other kind of source available licenses. So, but why is open source good? So open source means community involvement, like exactly because there are no restrictions. So this is the power of open source. It's not just the code is open, but there are no restrictions. Then you can build a big community around this, since people really like to work on something that is free and can be used by others, even after the project maybe stops existing. Of course, transparency. You can see exactly what is being done by the project. So there is a code. You read. You can read every line. You can see what is it doing. Is it phoning home? What is it doing with my data, etc. Open source tends to be reliable and secure. The biggest giants of software have been built as open source projects. So I don't know, Linux, Firefox, Ethereum itself, Nginx. Of course, if you just make a project over the weekend and you open source the code, that doesn't reliably, automatically make it a reliable and secure project. But many open source projects, because they are old and have many people working on them, tend to have high security. Another thing is that you can attract a lot of talent. Like, as an open source project, you can have people just do work for free on your project because they want to help, they like it, they want to have something to show off in their CV, and they are just really interested in having the project go further. And this is also how, as open source projects, you can actually attract talent and later even hire them. And another really important thing is that for open source, there is no vendor lock-in, so we don't create walled gardens. It's not like, I don't know, the Apple's ecosystem, that everything should be in the Apple ecosystem, or even what Google has started doing with around Android lately. So if open source is so cool, why doesn't everybody use it? Why isn't everything open source? Well, I mean, money is the problem. If you have no restrictions, and if you cannot have any restrictions to be called open source, that means that you cannot capture that thing. And to capture something, to make a return of investment, you need to capture it somehow. So there is no IP, so as a venture capitalist, you wouldn't like it, you wouldn't be able to easily invest in it. You cannot just say, okay, this is the software, I just sell it as it is. Because anybody can just copy it, and I don't know, you have spent a lot of time and money on development, and as such, they just use this, and they can put a lot of funding on design, marketing, and basically bid you to the market. You cannot hide anything in the code, so API keys or other secrets, you cannot hide them in the code, so you cannot build the kind of closed source software as a service apps that are used today. How do we solve this? So this is a very interesting question, and it's something that has not been solved yet. Like, funding open source is probably the holy grail, and nobody has actually managed to solve this problem. The idea would be to mix open and closed code, so you have some open source modules and some closed code that would be part of a sold package. You can have a freemium model where you have a free version and a paid version. You can sell support. This is the most used way of funding open source, because you, as the team that has built the project, you are the people best suited to explain how to use it, to sell support, and help the users. Donations, like we also know through Gitcoin grants, donations really help. Or grants and other funding for integration. So say a company wants you to create a special version of the software, and they pay you for it. Or you can go full crypto and just add a token and somehow make money out of it, but that's, yeah. So it's not just open source that I have been talking about, but also local first. So what does that mean? Local first is software that runs first and foremost locally in your computer. It protects your privacy and gives you control over your data. This is the definition of what is local first, and it's something that I feel we should be going back to our roots for decentralization, and I am really happy to see projects like TrueBlocks or Otterscan. They even had a talk yesterday that focuses on this. Of course, like other projects like DappNode also help build this because they allow you to host this local first software. So what is local first? The characteristic is that network is optional. It doesn't mean that there is no network. I mean, that would be completely stupid. You cannot do anything without accessing the internet anymore. But you don't go to the other side of the spectrum, which is every single keystroke to be a round trip to a server. The most important thing is that your data, the most important data that concern your privacy, are all kept locally. Because you build without having data sharing as an afterthought, these kind of applications tend to be more secure. Again, because you build for privacy, you build locally and you don't share data with external servers, that puts the privacy of the user at the forefront. So you don't just send data right and left, just sharing, I don't know, like your accounting data, for example, for rotki with other servers. Something that I really like the people who coined the local first word, they call it the long now, is that you can actually use the software forever. Nothing stops you from using it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as long as you have the binary and a system that can run it. You can also retain ownership of both the application and the data, which is in contrast with most closed source apps today, which they can just kick you out, the company can stop working, so you lose access to the website and the application. I'm talking a lot about data and data ownership. So today we have these questions that I like to ask about every single software that I use. So where is the data stored? Who has control over the data? And how do they handle it? So if you ask these questions for most of the apps that we tend to use today, the results are pretty, so the answers would be pretty abysmal. They would be very bad and make you think and be very pessimistic about the field that's supposed to be about decentralization. So to define the problem a bit better, we're talking about data, right? So what happens where you share data left and right? It leaks. This is just one of such leaks so it happened in China. 1 billion people's names, IDs, police records were leaked. Ledger, everybody knows that if you had a ledger before that date of the leak, we know where you live. Aadhaar in India, OpenSea from our field, First America, real estate data, the Equifax, and so on and so forth. So you put data there and it leaks. And we have been made completely insensitive to sharing data with everyone that asks for it. This is the biggest problem, and I don't blame any company that makes the leak themselves. It's regulations and the legislation that is pushing everybody to KYC you, to AML you. Every company has to keep really sensitive data for you by law, and they just do not have the operational security to do that. And even we as rotki, by German law, we have to keep data for people, and we don't want to. We delete it. I put it in a USB stick and keep it locally so that it's not on the server, just to comply with law. So I really blame legislation for this problem. Another thing with data control is that if you don't control your data, you can just be kicked out at any point. This is not just something that I say to sound like, like a harbinger of doom. But it happened. Just for accounting, which is what we do with rotki, your app may run out of business, and then all the accounting data that you have been painstakingly gathering and editing, modifying to be correct, you just poof, it's gone. Friederike from Gnosis actually had this, and there is a tweet about this, and I mean from Rai. So what's the problem with closed source SaaS, software as a service? They control your data. It's not yours. If they decide that you should not have this data anymore, it's gone. They can delete it. They can sell, or most of the times, I don't assume malice. It just leaks. This is what happens most of the times. They require your trust. It's completely intransparent. It's closed source, it's software as a service, and for applications that are in a field that is supposed to be about not trusting and verifying, it's crazy for me that we tend to use such applications. It can just kick you out, right? There is, I don't remember the name, and I don't want to lie about which accounting app it was, but they just kicked out a user because they didn't like their interactions in Twitter. He lost access to all of the accounting data that they had. Or businesses go out of business. And then when they do, you lose access to the data and to the application. If you don't build, it's not just about open source. If you don't build local first, there is a problem. You can say that you're open source, and then you have an open source app that is just a JavaScript kind of front-end to some centralized API. I've seen also apps like that try to uses the open source term as marketing and say, oh yeah, so look, you're open source, it's everything transparent. And then you go look at the code, and it's basically just some JavaScript calls to some centralized API, giving all of the data there. You don't know what they do or how they do it. So if you don't be local first, you tend to outsource work to APIs and data storage to the cloud. So in order to have secure applications and truly decentralized computing, we need to have local data storage and local data handling. What? OK, yeah. So what do we do? Like I'm painting a very bleak picture, and that is because I really see it as bleak. So how can we solve this problem? We should use the things that I just presented, so open source software, local software, and encryption. Open source software helps with adding transparency in everything that we are doing, both in functionality and data handling. And also, it can function when the team stops working. By using local software, we retain data ownership and privacy for the data of the user. And encryption, which is something that not everybody uses, but everybody should try to use as much as possible, gives you security and privacy. So I'll just talk a little bit about how Rotki does this, which is what we are building. So Rotki is a portfolio tracking and accounting application. It's open source, local, and privacy-focused. It's basically an implementation of all the attributes that I talked about. The architecture is kind of like this. So we have a local application that has a Python backend that is the core of everything. It takes data from the user and contacts external APIs, or open nodes or local nodes, depends on, so it's totally customizable. You can only use open APIs, or you can have everything local that is possible. And saves everything and caches everything in sensitive data are saved in the user database that's encrypted, and cast global data like, I don't know, historical prices would go in a global database. And we offer this as a binary that can be used in Windows, Mac, Linux, like even the Apple Silicon, as an Electron app. This is how most people use Rotki. Or we have a Docker image that anybody can just use and then access it through browser, even through the phone. I don't want to do a demo because it doesn't make sense. So I will just show some screenshots. So this is how it looks like. You have the dashboard where you can see how much you have and where, a historical net value graph. We do history and accounting, so you can see the history of everything that you have, like deposits, withdrawals in a centralized exchange, trades in exchanges, trades in AMMs. What is a small thing that I'm really proud of is our team has managed to make the only open source decoders for Ethereum transactions that I know for Python ecosystem at least, which read all of the Ethereum transactions that you have and make them into a human-readable format like this. And it's completely modular. So for every new protocol, you can just make a new file inside Rotki. It will decode also for another protocol how that particular transaction is translated into a human-readable format. Like here you can see, I think it's, yeah, I am claiming the Uniswap airdrop and selling it. We also do accounting. So all of this historical data that we gather, we just make a list. And depending on the settings that you give, like FIFO, LIFO, crypto is taxable or not taxable, we create a report with the final amount of how much profit or loss you have had. Then this you can extract into a CSV, and you can put it in a spreadsheet and share it with your accountant. We also do some small insights, like, I don't know, per protocol insights. So for a maker vault here, this is a huge maker vault, I don't remember by whom. You can see like how much collateral was locked, who owns it, what is the liquidation price, etc. You can have graphs, such as historical net value of Polkadot here. You can see that the guy is staking because the brown is how much Polkadot they have, and the green is the value. And yeah, so because I'm running out of time, as I said, for a demo, just ask me. I can show you stuff later. Some action items. Join our community in Discord if you liked what you are seeing. Download and try rotki. Follow us in Twitter. And buy premium. It's how we fund ourselves and how we try to solve our open source funding problem. And we're hiring, so come and talk to me or talk to me in Twitter. And one last thing in the last 10 seconds. So the Berlin Marathon is in 2 weeks, and I'm running for charity for kids with congenital heart disease. And I am raising some funds, and you can find more information here. I would really appreciate any donations for this. It's all going to Stiftung Kinderherz. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lefteris. We already have a question. I don't even have to say anything.
Have you any interfaces to traditional banking applications, fiat, or is it just for crypto assets?
We want to. I have a PR for my bank, and for N26 and for some others, but it's, there is no good general API for banks that is easy to use with local apps. But we are trying to also show your, how much you have in your bank and all transactions. Yeah?
German banks have a standardized interface, HSBI, for accessing account data. And but it's quite old as a successor meanwhile. But anyway.
I tried to look at it. But yeah, it seems a bit more complicated to do. So you need to have a hosted application somewhere in order to use this. At least that's how it looked to me when I looked at it. Yeah,
The bank is a hosted application by definition.
No. Anyway, I will look at it. But we want to do this. The other way, instead of using this, is to actually do wow, I don't remember the word, but you can make one interface per bank, just by scanning the HTML. Yeah, it's not scalable. I have heard about the particular interface for German banks, but I had a problem when trying to implement it in a generic way. If you have a really good guide or tutorial or something, I would love to read it and do it, because this is something that I really, really want, since I also am here. Yeah, no. Or Twitter, I had the links there. I will be around.
Okay, if there's no more other questions, then Lefteris, thank you again so much. Big round of applause.